Hello, and welcome to Creating and Using Rubrics in Canvas. My name is Rosalia DiNardo, and I am the Assistant Director in the e-learning division at Camden County College. Today's agenda. First, we're going to talk about why use a rubric. Then we're going to discuss the different parts of a rubric. We're going to look at how to create a rubric in Canvas. There's going to be a time for question and answers. And then I'm going to do a little section on what support is available to you and some reminders as well. So why use a rubric? Well, rubrics can help you provide timely feedback. You all have multiple classes that you are teaching, and it can be time consuming typing out the same comments over and over again. So having a rubric can help you and save that time by just clicking on the actual rubric if you're using it in Canvas, or if you're using it in a face-to-face class, you can check off the box on the paper, and then students can read that feedback and everybody gets the same type of feedback. Rubrics can prepare students to use detailed feedback. So it allows you to have more, when you're using a rubric, it allows you to have more detailed feedback on the actual scale itself in the descriptions. Whereas when you're grading a lot of papers, you might abbreviate what the feedback is, and then students are not getting the full feedback. Rubrics encourage critical thinking. So for students, um, they start to look at the feedback, or I'm sorry, they start to look at the rubric and determine what it is that they need to do for that particular task or assignment, because they can see the different components within the rubric. Rubrics facilitate communication with others, and by that, you can share your rubric within your department, or even if it's a more generalized rubric, especially when it comes to things like discussion boards, that's something that you can share with others, even outside of your department, within your division. Rubrics help us to refine our teaching skills, and it also provides level playing field. So sometimes it can be difficult trying to determine um, the point value that you're going to give your students based on the work that they've submitted. And if you're using a rubric, it puts everybody, it's a standardized evaluation that everybody can use and see and get their grades from. So now, as I go through the parts of the rubric and discuss rubrics, I'm going to discuss them whether or not you're going to use them in a face-to-face class, or if you're going to use it as a rubric on Canvas. The reason why I'm doing that is because some of you are teaching hybrid courses, and some of you may not want to use the rubric function in Canvas. You might only want to use it in your face-to-face courses. So I'm going to kind of talk about it in both aspects. So when you're creating a rubric, it should never be more than 1 page long. The reason why is you don't want to inundate yourself and the student with getting too detailed and too getting into trivial details of what the skills and knowledge expectations are. You want to try and keep it a little more broad. Part one of the rubric is the task description. And when we talk about the task, we're talking about whether it's an assignment, whether it's something like participation, maybe it's a presentation, something of that nature. That is the task at hand. Now, if you're doing a rubric for a face-to-face class, it's recommended that you place the description of that task at the top of the rubric, because it grabs the student's attention. And the students then associate the rubric with that particular task. Now, if the task directions are too long, then it's suggested to just put the name of the task at the top and put the task on a separate sheet of paper so that students can still associate that rubric with that task, but it's not creating a rubric that's more than 1 page in length. Part two is the scale. And when we talk about the scale, we're talking about the levels of achievement. So this would be um, the levels of the criteria that they have to meet. So you want to try and use positive active verb descriptions. Like, for example, as we have on the slide, mastery, partial mastery, progressing, emerging. You want to try and keep it positive for the students. You also want to keep in mind that 3 to 5 scales is the appropriate amount. And it is also suggested that maybe in your first go around with creating a rubric, you only create 3 scales. So you might only have mastery, partial mastery, and progressing. And then as you go on and you're tweaking in future semesters, then you can add on the additional 2 scales. So you want to kind of keep it simple, see how it goes, and then you can always add on if you feel that there is a need for those other scales and descriptions. Part three is what we call dimensions. Dimensions are actually the breakdown of the skills or knowledge that the students need to know. So these are the actual criteria. That's what I would refer to them as. The dimensions equal criteria. So your criteria could be a knowledge of or understanding of, and then whatever it is that you want them to understand. It could be their critical thinking. It could be their communication. In the case of a presentation, maybe it's the use of a visual aid or their presentation skills. So just as we did with the scales, having a minimum of 3 to a maximum of 5, we want to keep the dimensions or criteria down to 6 or 7. Now, these are just examples of what you can have listed as criteria. Obviously, in your different classes, it's going to vary what it is that what your expectations are for students. One of the things that helps with the dimensions is it helps students see the components of the assignment. So they can see that, okay, I need to get the top score for my visual aid, I need to do this, this, and this. And that's where the dimensions help. So just having a rubric that has the scale listed is not helpful to students. You actually need the dimensions where you break down and describe what it is that they need to do. And that's where the descriptions of the dimensions come in. So this is where the students actually get their feedback. So what constitutes each criteria? What is it that you want them to know how to earn full points on each of those criteria that you have listed? So then this is where you put in the descriptions of each of the dimensions. Now we've all seen rubrics, so I did not put up a sample of a rubric because I didn't have one that I could uh, share at the moment. So, but we've all seen them, we've possibly used them, but we possibly did not know that there are different dimensions that go into creating a rubric. So when you're constructing a rubric, there are actually 4 stages to the construction. Stage 1, as you probably know, is the reflection stage. So here's where we start to wonder, what do we want to do with this rubric? You might even want to know, is it necessary to have a rubric for this particular task or assignment? what happened the last time you created the assignment? And I know that this happens every semester when I teach. I look at an assignment and I see, what happened this semester that was different from previous semesters? Do I need to add anything in particular to my instructions to prevent or to clarify something? So you want to start thinking now, if you're going to use a rubric for a task that you had not previously used a rubric for, what happened in the past that you want to make sure does not happen again? And what are your expectations for your students? What are your expectations for their skill level and for what you expect them to do? For stage 2, this is where you start listing everything and putting your reflections on paper. You want to focus on the details of the assignment, and you want to see what learning objectives you want accomplished, and you want to create your rubric based on those items right there. Stage 3 is called grouping and labeling. This is where you organize your thoughts from stages 1 and 4, or I'm sorry, 1 and 2. And you want to group similar expectations together. So if you have two learning objectives that are quite similar, you might want to put them together under one criteria. Stage 4 is the application stage. This is when you start to combine the dimensions and start to create the descriptions from stage 3 and create the final rubric grid. All right, so now what I want to do is, now that we've talked a little bit about why to use a rubric and the different parts of a rubric, I actually want to show you how to create one in Canvas. So if you could bear with me for one moment while I go to that section of my computer. I am going to go into a training class here on my dashboard. Now there's actually two ways that you can create a rubric. You can create it at the course level, which is what I'm going to show you how to do, or you could create it at the assignment level. I prefer creating it at the course level because then it saves it and I can then use that assignment or that rubric in any assignment that I choose to. So creating it at the course level is the best way to create your rubric. So what I want to do is, in my tabs right here to the left, I want to find the one that says rubric, and I have it right here. Now, of course, mine is third from the bottom, but as you know from working in your Canvas accounts, that's not necessarily true for everyone, that the tabs are in whatever order you place them in. So I'm going to click on rubrics. And as you can see, I already have one created. And I just have two criteria listed for this because I was just playing around with it, and it's worth 15 points. But what I want to do is I want to show you how to create one from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I am going to click on the plus add rubric button at the top right here. It's the gray box. And the first thing it wants you to do is it wants you to name the rubric. So maybe this is going to be the oral presentation rubric. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is we have to create the criteria that we want the students to follow. So it's a little different here the first time you do it. The first time you do it, you actually have to click on the edit pencil button right here and change this information right in the box. After that, you'll click on the plus criterion button. So I'm going to click on the pencil and a box will appear. And I want to put my first criteria. So this is an oral presentation. So perhaps I want to start with the student's physical, and it would help if I could spell physical appearance. And movements. Okay. And then in the long description box, this is where you are going to put the description of the skills that you want the students to master. So I'm just going to put skills and knowledge right there. Now, I do think that the best way, if you're going to use Canvas for your rubrics, I do highly recommend creating your rubric in advance on a Word document, and then that way you could just copy and paste this information directly instead of having to type it all in each individual box as you go along. And then I type update criteria. Then I click on the plus criterion button, and I can put in a new criteria. So maybe I want to have a criteria for their vocals. And again, I want to put in this skills and knowledge portion that I want them to know what they have to do in order to get the full points. And I click the create criterion button. And again, I keep doing that. And remember, we said that 6 to 7 is a nice number of criteria to have. Now we got to do our scale, or as Canvas calls it, our ratings. So we want to start with 3. And we're going to put this one as partial mastery. And inside, then you put what constitutes partial mastery. And there we go. All right. So now we have a 5-pointer, we have a 3-pointer, and we have a 0-pointer. But I can change that. So I could edit the 5-pointer, and I could put this as mastery for my level, and I could put in my description. And update the rating, and so on. Now, again, remember, start with 3, but go up to 5 if you feel the need to. I could change the point value of anything I want, and it totals how many points. When I'm done, I click the Create Rubric button, and it's going to show me what it looks like. I have the option over here to the top right to edit the rubric, or I can even delete the rubric if I don't like what I see. Unfortunately, there is not a way to take your Word document and upload it. You do have to fill out each and every box of this rubric. And that's why I feel that it's best to have the Word document copy created first. That way, in case you ever need that document for a face-to-face class or to hand in with something, or to use for future use, you have that Word document, and then you could just copy and paste. And I think that that is the best solution for creating your rubric. So now here I have 2 rubrics created, and I want to use this rubric in an assignment. So now, in order to do that, I have to click on my assignment tab to the left. I have quite a few assignments in here, so bear with it. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I am going to choose an assignment. So let's say I choose this introductions and conclusions assignment. So what I want to do is I want to click on the assignment. Now, first you have to create the assignment before you can attach the rubric to it. So once you create the assignment and you save the assignment, at the very bottom right here, you'll see that it says plus rubric in a gray box to the bottom left. And that's how we're going to attach our rubric. Once we attach the rubric, students will be able to see the rubric and be able to see how it is that you are going to be grading them. So I'm going to click on the plus rubric button, and I'm going to scroll down a bit. Now, as you can see, it will let you create a rubric right here. But I want to use a rubric that I've already created that's associated with the entire course. So I click on this Find a Rubric, and I have the name of this course is called Training 101, and it's telling me that I have 2 rubrics listed here. So I'm going to click on that. Then it's going to show me what 2 rubrics I have. So it's very important that if you're going to have multiple rubrics to give them names, because if you just have rubric 1, rubric 2, you're going to have to try and scroll through this little section here and see if it's the correct rubric. So I'm going to choose the second rubric, and I'm going to scroll down, and there's a button once you scroll down that says use this rubric. It's a gray button, and I'm going to click on that rubric. What that does is it now places that rubric at the bottom of the assignment. So when students go on, they're going to see this assignment, and then they are going to see the rubric at the very bottom. Now, we've created our rubric. We have attached it to an assignment. The next thing you're going to want to learn how to do is how do you grade using the rubric? Well, it's very simple. If we scroll up to the top and we click on Speed Grader, and I don't think I have any students that have done this assignment. So let's see. I click on View Rubric, and here, if I had a student that had done this assignment, I can click on the different rubric descriptions, and it will start adding up the total for me. If I go over here, so far it says that the student has received 5 out of 10 points. If I wanted to, for this one where I gave the student a 0, I can click on the comment bubble here, and I can add an additional comment. So not only will the student see the description that's listed in that criteria, but I can also, if I felt that the student needed a little more feedback, I can add that as well. I'm going to save this. And then it says that the student got 5 points. Now, if you notice at the top, it does not populate the grade here. I could put in the 5 points here, or if I felt that the student fell in between of something and I wanted to give them maybe a couple extra points, maybe I wanted to give the student a 7 out of 10, I could do that. And then I could click submit. And then what that does is it gives the student a different grade than what was on the rubric. Now, when the student goes to look at their grade, they're going to see this grade right here. They're going to see the rubric with the ratings, and they're going to see any additional comments that you have added in. So that is how to create a rubric, how to add a rubric, and how to grade a rubric. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. So now is the time to type in any questions in the Go to Webinar panel. And while I'm waiting to see if there's any questions come up, I'm going to go over a few extra items as well. So first, I want to introduce you to the e-learning division. Dr. Patrick Chad has started, unfortunately, while we were out of the office. So it is unlikely that any of you have had the opportunity to meet with him. He is our Associate Dean of e-learning. I am Rosalia DiNardo, as I introduced myself in the beginning. I'm the Assistant Director. And then most of you should know Ginny McGee, our instructional designer. She's usually the first line of support that people go to. You do have additional support available to you. First and foremost, there's Canvas. There's Search the Canvas guides. So if you wanted some step-by-step instructions on how to do rubrics, you can go to the Canvas guides and you can put in the word rubric, and the step-by-step instructions with pictures will show up for you. There is a support line and there is a live chat. And I will say that they have been getting much better. They have added more people since we have been working remotely for the most part and online. So the wait is not as long. And Canvas is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every single day of the year. The e-learning division is available Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. And in addition to our individual emails, we do have a shared email that we use so that we can all make sure that your messages are responded to in a timely manner. And that email is distancelearning@camdencc.edu. I want to remind you about Tech Week, which is next week, August 20th through the 22nd, and I hope that you join us for that. All right, let's go back and see what questions you might have. All right. Would we use a rubric to set up the departmental English exam? It would be an essay, and students would have to pick one out of the two essays. So yes, you can use the rubric. What would happen is, regardless of what essay the students pick, the rubric would be the same, and you could use the rubric on that assignment. Okay, let's see. It looks like that might be the only question. I will wait a minute and see if anything else comes in. The question bar is a little difficult to see, so I do apologize. I'm trying not to miss any of your questions. Oh, here we go. How do you use the rubric in another assignment? Well, you would do the same thing that we did to put the assignment, the rubric in the one assignment. After you've created that entire assignment, you would then go back in and scroll all the way down to the bottom and click on the plus rubric button. And then you would find that rubric that you want to use again. That's why it's important to create your rubrics at the course level like I showed you, rather than the assignment level. You cannot revise the um, you cannot revise the rubric for just one assignment. If you revise it, it revises it for all of them. So if you need to have different rubrics for different assignments, you would have to have multiple rubrics instead. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming through. I want to thank you for joining me this afternoon. And again, remember that this is going to be, this was recorded and will be located in the Canvas Faculty Hub. Again, step-by-step directions are available in the Search the Canvas guides. If that is easier for you to follow, you can print those out. And I hope to see some of you next week for Tech Week. Thank you.